Okay, so picking up where we left off, we're going to look at mistakes that are commonly made, when we're looking at training perspectives or from the perspective of the individual trying to improve speed. So in other words, what are some of the issues that come about in speed training that we need to be concerned about? This first one we've kind of already talked about a little bit, the idea of overstriding. So, we talk about the importance of stride length and stride rate. And I guess more specifically, stride length would be associated with this. So many times individuals will try to kind of artificially make their stride length longer. If they're not strong enough or they don't have the physical capability of maintaining that, what essentially ends up happening is you end up with a braking effect. So basically every step, instead of getting faster or maintaining speed, they're effectively slowing themselves down. So that's something you want to kind of be mindful of and make sure not to encourage that. This is kind of one of the things with overspeed training that's usually a problem. Again, overspeed training can help, and that's basically where you're, for instance, like again, the downhill running. You have to really make sure if you're doing that the slope is not too big, because you'll end up with that braking effect, because they're basically stopping themselves every time they take a step. Doing speed work under fatiguing conditions. When you're sprinting for the purposes of improving speed, you need to have complete rest periods in between sprints. Okay, so sprinting under fatiguing conditions is something that you don't want to be doing. Again, save your metabolic conditioning for metabolic conditioning. Save your sprint work for sprint work. Okay, so we need to make sure that you're not doing it under fatiguing conditions. Again, kind of just other mistakes and errors we're going to look at. So on the next couple slides, they're actually in your book as well, so you could kind of see some of the errors. I won't necessarily go through the entire tables here in this recording, but you could kind of either pause or just even go back into your book and kind of make your connection to those. So here's one of the tables I was talking about. So with start and acceleration, you see some of the errors, the causes, and the corrections. Okay, one of the probably biggest things that you tend to see, this one right here, the premature upright posture. That's something you see many times. So obviously we know with the start and acceleration, we kind of have that. We went over the differences in the previous class. That posture that you're going to have in acceleration. Okay, they talk about some of the causes and the correction. Again, there's certain drills that you can do that could help encourage that forward-leaning posture. We showed some of them in the 245 class, but those are some things you can do that. A couple of the other ones that are up here, I'll just point out the jump first stride. Again, it's usually just trying to, again, force that first stride a little too much. Again, it's got to be kind of like a natural stride. You can't force that, because there's just going to be too many braking forces. Again, make note of some of these others and just kind of take your time with them so that you can kind of see, but these are important things to note for testing purposes. And here's when we look at maximum velocity. So again, just some different things that you would see with maximum velocity. You do see some postural items noted here, the head and neck hyperextended or hyperflexed. And again, they give some tips like, again, normal erect head carriage, eyes focused straight ahead. And again, sometimes that can be because of fatigue. So you'd want to make sure, that's why, again, it's all the more important to make sure that you're not doing this under fatiguing circumstances. Again, some of these others, again, feet excessively turned outward, again, could just be because of faulty running form. Some of these things can also be associated with just some muscle imbalances that the individual has. Again, take your time, go through these a little bit, and just kind of get an idea as far as what you're looking at and as far as the errors are concerned. So looking at agility performance and change of direction speed. So again, we're looking at two different things here with change of direction and perceptual cognitive ability. So again, when we're talking agility, again, remember, agility is also looking at your ability to respond to a stimulus. So that's going to be a little different than just working on change of direction speed or change of direction mechanics. So that's something that you need to be aware of, and how the different drills kind of within the agility paradigm, like what specific things they actually do work on. Okay, so on the next slide, we're going to look at ground reaction forces and contact times during different change of direction and agility maneuvers. Okay, so looking at this, so this references what we were talking about on the previous slide. So again, when you talk about the demands of the test and also the ability to include reactive agility. So again, this is just showing you the increased force and the increased ground reaction forces and the contact times associated when you're involving a decision with agility. Okay, so that's an important thing here. So again, in addition to doing sort of your predetermined drills, also very important that in some way try to make sure that the athletes are also, in addition, having to work on some decision making. So the change of direction drills are important. There's certainly physical traits there that can be built upon, but you need to make sure that in addition to that, they're also working on their reaction, the ability to react to an outside stimulus when they're changing direction. Okay, so we're going to be looking at here at factors affecting change of direction and perceptual cognitive ability. So again, change of direction ability, again, is going to change depending on the demand of the test. So again, some change of direction abilities may be slightly different from test to test, so it's going to be important to kind of differentiate what you're doing. So again, you're not just picking a certain test just out of the blue, or you're not picking a certain, I guess, drill out of the blue, but you're picking something that you're specifically looking to face. So, and really in the end, it's the combination ability to decelerate, reorientate the body, and face or partially face the direction of intended travel, and then explosively reaccelerate that truly determines this. So again, in the end, we have the physical traits that we have to kind of build and work on that are really going to help with change of direction ability. So again, it goes beyond, again, just any one particular drill. We have to make sure that we're addressing the specific types of qualities that they need. Some of this can even be done as a result of strength training. For instance, doing strength work where you're emphasizing either the eccentric or isometric contraction can also help with agility. Okay, so I don't know if I brought it up in class yet, but there was actually a strength coach once did a study. He had a bunch of baseball players do the 5-10-5 pro agility, and he had a group of others not do it at all. They basically just focused on working on eccentric and isometric strength as a part of their strength workouts. That group actually then, when retested on the 5-10-5 pro agility, actually did a little better than the group that was actually just using that to train it. So again, that just goes to show you, and again, if you think about it, again, the eccentric contraction is going to help strengthen your deceleration. Your isometric contraction is going to help with your stabilization. So those are important things to note as a part of the training as well that can certainly be a benefit to the athlete. So again, the perceptual cognitive ability, so there are several factors that are components of perceptual cognitive ability. Okay, so these are all things that we need to be aware of that are going to help in as far as the actual perceptual cognitive ability is concerned. So again, visual scanning, anticipation, pattern recognition, knowledge of the situation, decision-making time, and reaction time. So these are kind of those components that you need to have some type of sort of outside stimulus to kind of force the individual to make a decision, okay? So that's an important thing to know. So again, the perceptual cognitive abilities, if you think of the demands of the sport, think about what they're going to have to react to as a function of the sport. And that could kind of give you some ideas in as far as what you would want them to particularly work on as the perceptual cognitive ability is concerned. And again, so many of those aspects are sport specific. So think about like the challenges that they're going to kind of be faced with as a function of the sport, and then just kind of tie that into how you would want to effectively kind of train that aspect of it. Again, all you're looking to do with this is, again, having them react to something. So like, for instance, a mirror drill could be something with that. So have, one athlete have to follow somebody, in a side to side drill, they can do that. And again, it's teaching them that they have to be able to respond and react to a stimulus. Okay, so here we look at some technical guidelines in coaching with these abilities. So we look at the visual focus. So when changing direction in response to an opponent, we want to kind of encourage athletes to focus on the shoulders, trunk, and hips, because this way here there's less of a chance of them kind of being deceived as far as the movement's concerned with those. We also want that following the anticipation of event, that they should quickly redirect attention to a new area to help lead transition of the body. So that would be another issue that you would want to look at as far as the visual focus is concerned. Body position during braking and reacceleration. So some things you want to pay note to here is, one, controlling the trunk. So we want to make sure that there's not a lot of trunk motion. We do know that the trunk kind of changes its orientation. If you remember in class, we showed the two pictures of the two different individuals showing change of direction, where the one person was kind of bent over too far at the trunk and what that meant. Through the stance phase, you want to make sure to reorientate the trunk and hips towards the direction of the intended travel, and that allows for just a more effective reacceleration. So as you get through that stance phase, make sure that you've moved in the direction of the intended motion. Just like with acceleration mechanics, you want to have the appropriate body lean. Again, strong alignment of the ankle, knee, hip, and through the trunk and shoulders, and then enter and exit changes in direction with a low center of mass. So remember, we want to make sure that we're keeping that low center of gravity. With leg action, you want to make sure that the athlete can effectively dissipate or tolerate eccentric braking loads. And that's why working on that eccentric strengthening is very important. So again, that could even be done through resistance training. So, taking your resistance training exercises, making sure that they're doing a 3 to 5 second eccentric. Again, that's not something that they have to do all the time, but it's something that they can do to kind of help, okay? And make sure they avoid a stiff-legged braking style. So make sure there's a good range of motion, that as they're stopping, they have good joint angles as they're doing it, because the stiff-legged braking style could predispose them to injury. Emphasize them pushing the ground away. So again, don't think of just like kind of slamming your foot into the ground. You want to practice pushing the ground away. That's going to help with appropriate force action. And then the arm action, again, powerful arm action should be used. That's going to facilitate leg drive. So again, just want to make sure that the arm action is not counterproductive, so it shouldn't cause a decrease in speed, more specifically as you're transitioning. So again, the key is efficient arm action is going to help with the action of the lower body. You want to make sure that it's not taking away. So with training goals, again, training of agility is threefold. Again, enhance perceptual cognitive ability. So again, the ability to be able to react to that outside stimulus. Effective and rapid braking of one's momentum. So that's going to be able to, one, be able to slow yourself down, and then two, be able to stabilize yourself, okay? And then rapid reacceleration towards the new direction of travel. So key to this point is going to be, again, all three types of muscular contraction need to be trained as a part of training. So again, we always think of the concentric because that's kind of what completes the movement, or in the case of resistance training, completes the lift. But you also want to make sure that in addition to that, that you're also working on the isometric and eccentric. Those can certainly be things that would enhance one's ability to stop and start. And if as a result of testing, you may see that there may be, for instance, issues with deceleration, then you would want to emphasize that as a part of their training. Okay, so methods of developing speed. So we're going to talk here about sprinting. So again, sprinting requires near maximum to maximum muscle activation. So this depends on high central nervous system activity, okay? This is a function known as rate coding. So basically by doing the high velocity sprint work, quality sprint work, you're essentially allowing the central nervous system to develop in a way that's going to help enhance your speed, okay? So the idea of rate coding. So essentially what that means is this. So when a signal frequency reaches a threshold through the nervous system, skeletal muscle doesn't completely relax between stimulations, okay? So what this means is that you get incomplete relaxation of the muscle and more forceful contractions, which creates greater rate of force development. So that's going to help that sprinting ability. So it's really important to make sure that you're working on high quality sprint work in order to enhance this specific type of activity. Another thing of note is that if you look at table 19.3 in your text, they talk about, besides obviously just sprinting, which is something used to develop speed, they talk about assistance training or overspeed work and resisted sprinting. So we made mention of overspeed training already. Again, that is a good form of training. You just have to make sure that it's utilized appropriately. The resisted sprint work, which again is suggested to use a sled with resistance or incline sprinting. Parachutes do not tend to be a good method to do this with because they tend to distort the running form. They don't apply their resistance in a good manner. So make a note to yourself to go back and review that table. It gives you some suggested guidelines for each regarding those two types of training. It also tells you potential disadvantages and advantages for each type. So strength is another way. So again, just pure strength development will to a degree help with speed. Again, as I talked about in class, it is a little more specific to developing acceleration, but there is a transfer of strength improvement to sprinting, okay? Now again, how much transfer will depend on the specificity. But you can help because obviously if you're helping increase force, you're helping increase the ability of the individual to just apply force into the ground. Okay, so transfer of training effect deals with the degree of performance adaptation and results of similarities between the movement patterns, peak force, rate of force development, acceleration, and velocity patterns. So again, obviously, your best methods that involve to improve speed are those that directly involve sprinting. So again, those methods that I talked about that are on that table, on table 19.3, they're a little bit more direct, but strength training does have a carryover. So it's important to note that, again, speed is kind of underpinned by someone's ability to produce force. So obviously, maximal strength training and speed strength are both things that can be emphasized as a part of this. So you just have to, again, understand what carryover it has. Typically, a lot of times beginners will get the biggest bump in speed just directly through strength training, but strength training is definitely something that can be utilized by the individual. Okay, mobility. So here we have the definition of mobility, and again, mobility is going to be important because again, your legs do have to move through a good range of motion as you're sprinting. So again, we want to make sure that individuals have a good functional range of motion as a result, and that will obviously help with some of the form issues. Again, sometimes, we can address this through various manners. It doesn't necessarily just have to be developed through stretching. So at the same time, you want to make sure that the individual isn't, putting too much emphasis on gaining range of motion, as that could kind of de-emphasize kind of like optimal kinematic variables as it relates to sprinting. So mobility is not a kinetic variable because it doesn't involve force. However, again, appropriate ranges of motion are something that can be addressed through training. So here's just another table that you can take a look at. So this looks at different types of change of direction skills and agility drill progression. So if you look at this, you see For change of direction, what a beginner, intermediate, and advanced athlete can do. Again, there's a difference between change of direction and maneuverability, okay? So maneuverability is a little bit different because it does require some more decreases in velocity and a little bit more straight line running. And they show different drills in the book that address change of direction versus those that address maneuverability. Again, with agility involves physical and technical competence, but you want to make sure that you're going to improve that perceptual cognitive ability. So you can kind of see here for beginner, intermediate, advanced, what levels should be done, and some ideas of some of the different drills that can be incorporated.